Hello, my name is Brian Lowry. I'm a columnist and critic with Variety. As part of Media Literacy Week, we are having this conversation here with about media literacy, and are joined by what are we would refer to as thought leaders on the topic. To my left is Liebe Geft, who is the director of the Museum of Tolerance. Mark Slavkin, the director of education at the Wallis Annenberg Center for the Performing Arts, and Tessa Jolls, who is the president of the Center for Media Literacy.
To the point about the art, there's a role for any sort of art in expressing or conveying meaning. But there's also something in the ritual of the community coming together in the live performing arts world in which I work to make meaning together. And it may be a little less frightening or overwhelming or daunting if it's not each individual up against the world of information all by themselves. When you think of that kind of stereotype of somebody on their cell phone who has all this in front of them and is isolated and alone in trying to make understanding of that. Bringing people together and prompting discussion and debate and interaction, I think, is part of the way we also process information. So I was kind of influenced by that, but you've given me something I hadn't thought about. And then I also like your point that communal give and take is something that I think we need to protect, whether it's in a classroom or in a museum or in a theater. So I think we're more vulnerable when we're all by ourselves to be manipulated or to misunderstand. And I think there can be a check and balance through the process of group interaction and creating those forums to have the discussion, to respond to important issues and ideas. We love to do that, not just with young people, but with adults. This idea of arts and ideas going together. We hosted a program with Gay Men's Chorus called It Gets Better about bullying of gay and lesbian kids in school. We had this talk back afterwards with high school kids. And it was a place where they finally felt they could act. Was it hard being gay? When did you know you were gay? Could you tell your mom about that? If you're religion, how could you do that? And I felt, where else? These kids were hungry to have those conversations. And you can't always do that alone on your cell phone or your computer. So to create space and use the arts to prompt conversation and discussion is, I think, something really important. That real human being interaction, it sounds passé, without the cell phone, but just person to person. And I'm going to continue to speak up for that.
I just, one point before I forget it, because when you mentioned the little boy asking if the play was fact-based, and I'm thinking, when was the last time a prestige movie that was based on a true story that became eligible, say, for Oscar consideration, didn't trigger a controversy about actually how accurate it is? I mean, that's become commonplace now, is that it will say based on a true story, and then there will invariably be a debate on how true is the true story on which it is based. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, that's also part of the question, but it's a double-edged sword, of course. If we're doubting everything and questioning and everything, then where do you land on what you believe to be the truth and the reality? And I think what Mark was saying actually has been validated, because if you look at the attendance to theatres and museums, it is increasing all of the time, showing us that even in a digital age, people yearn for that institutional space where they can come together for dialogue and discussion. And that is, after all, the give and take of a free democratic society. It is what we thrive upon. And so these gadgets are not going to displace that. And hopefully we will find that middle ground. But in the midst of this rapidly changing and far-reaching revolution, it's hard to see what the outcome will be. And that's why we have to buckle under and give ourselves the lifeboats and the steadying weights to navigate it. And media literacy skills are vitally important.
And that's where I'm hopeful that because the pace of change is so great, because people are starting to feel overwhelmed, that the demand, if you will, for the tools to help buffer this will but will be there to a greater extent. That we would have more educators saying, my kids are overwhelmed with information, they're confused about what's true, they're citing sources that are completely not legitimate. Help me. How do I help them? That we're confronting the problem quickly. It's not, as my point, that's not off 100 years from now. It's today or tomorrow or next week. That this issue of where do we get the wisdom, where do we get understanding beyond the overwhelming amount of factoids and trivia, that there'll be a demand for, I'm hoping that there'll be demand for it, and sort of a backlash against it. I feel kind of like we're all in this ice cream store that's brand new and exciting, so we want to just keep eating all the ice cream. But we'll soon be at that stomach ache point, which is I'm starting to realize that having ice cream all day, it sounded great, but what about a little less ice cream and a little bit more pause and reflection? So
when I was growing up, it was turn the television off during dinner. Now the rule in the house is you turn your cell phones off during dinner. So yes, we can have mastery over it. It doesn't have to dominate and take over our lives. But we'll find a way to hopefully use it. Unfortunately, the more evil forces in the world have mastered this technology, have figured out how to use it so effectively, with almost surgical precision, to target the audiences, knowing how to do so, the types of messages, with a call to action that we are seeing played out by these so-called lone wolves around the world, which is seriously threatening the safety and security of our world. And we've got some catch-up to do in that regard.
It seems like it was actually both an excellent summation in a way. Tessa, would you like to kind of add a closing note on what you would like people to take away from this conversation?
Yes, well, I share your hope, Mark, because I really do see more demand for the process skills, for the media literacy skills, and I think that people are realizing more and more that these skills are really needed, even as Liebe was saying, for survival. And we also increasingly have more research on media literacy programs and their effectiveness, and we're seeing that they do make a difference in terms of understanding and even in changing behaviors. And so I think that we do have a lot of hope. And in a sense, the very onslaught of all of the media and the technology is also creating the awareness that we need more education, we need more skill building, and that the needs of citizens have really evolved and changed.